Okay, I think this is gonna be the last thing for week 2 is getting this basement insulation in. And I'll wait until after we got the floor system in, um, just to make it a little easier on what we're dealing with. And there's two ways to deal with this interior insulation. Look at excuse me, look at sheet number 5 and at the wall section detail, and you'll see it there. It's the rigid insulation R6 Thermax. Okay, and it's applied to the inside of the concrete wall. Now, one way to deal with this, and we could have done it this way if we'd have started with it at the beginning, would be to edit our foundation wall family and add that 1 inch of insulation to the interior side of it. However, if we'd have done that, we would have, when we put our wall footings in, we would have had to apply a 1 inch or a half inch eccentricity to the footing so that the footing would still be centered under the concrete wall. Okay, now we didn't do that. I think that's one way to do it, but you got an extra step in dealing with your footings. Plus, you would still have to have two different, you'd have to have a plain foundation wall here and here because we do not have the Thermax insulation coming across there. So creating the Thermax as a separate wall type and then aligning it to the concrete is the best way. Now I created this one. It's just a basic interior wall. Duplicated, made me a new one. The polyisocyanurate is what this thing's made of. And if you just do a search up here for insulation, you'll see rigid insulation, and then the polyscyanurate was down here in the AEC materials. And I kind of did a little scrolling down, and so here it is right here. And that's what this Thermax is made of. Okay, and so click there, loaded it up. I applied a crosshatch 4-gallon cut pattern to it. And the main reason I went ahead and chose the correct material type is because it already has the physical and the thermal properties. Well, the thermal properties already loaded in here. Not really important for what we're doing in our project, but if you're working for a firm and they like to keep track of the thermal efficiency of their designs, then you would want to have that in there, um, just so you know you got the right stuff. Okay, and so created that wall type. Okay, and when I put it in, base constraint is the basement level, and the top constraint is the top of foundation wall plus 1.5 inches. And then I just drew it to the inside of my concrete wall and then came back and aligned it and locked it to the inside of the concrete wall. Now, one of the problems that comes up with that is that it covers up our windows. So, well, let me go to section 2. So you can see here it is. Okay, it goes up to the bottom of the floor joist system. We don't really have to worry about the beam pocket opening per se because the insulation will be cut to fit around the beam after the beam is installed. Okay, but it does stop at or starts at the top of the floor slab. Now, how do we deal with it? Because it covers up the window opening, as you can see in this section. It covers it up. So we have to do a wall opening through that. And how I set that up is I put me a wall section in, and I pulled the clip paint, the far clip plane back into the wall system so that it's actually in the wall, inside the basement wall. Now we need to make an edit to our windows because the base type on the windows has an interior trim, and so we're going to turn that off. So go to your window awnings, scroll down interior casing and uncheck that box, and it will get rid of the interior casing trim of the window. Now the jamb still stops at the edge of the concrete, and that's fine because that's the way it would be done since this is an unfinished basement. Now we got to create a wall opening through there, and I'll kind of show you the basics of how to do that. You'll find it easier if you'll switch this view over to wireframe so that you can see the whole window. Now you lose your insulation here, so you can go back to section 2 or you can go to basement floor, either one. So I select the insulation wall and I want to go create a wall opening. And now I go back to the section where I'm going to work on it. Now it's going to be aligned to the edges of that window. And then so I'll draw my out in, and then now if you're going to use the align tool, I suggest doing the left and right sides first, because I ran into a problem in which I waited to do one of the sides last, and it had self-constrained itself based on dimensions for whatever reason. Okay, and then we pop back over to our shaded view. Now you can see we've got an opening in our insulation where our window is, and that's our wall opening right there. Okay, so that's how we're going to do with that on those 3 windows. And honestly, let's see. I'll deal with that in another video because we're going to have to deal with our cut plane levels and things like that when we start dealing with our drawing sheet. So we'll get back around to that later. So that should be it as far as getting week 2 finished up. If you got questions, send me an email, come see me.